Hi, welcome back to the Women in Bloom podcast. My name's Annie. Here with me is Caroline.
Hello.
And Alexis.
Hello.
In our first podcast, we talked about Women in Bloom, how it started and what it's all about. In this podcast, we'd like to share more about who we are, our stories and our background. But let me just say, if you haven't seen the first podcast, please check it out. Thank you. Alexis, do you want to kick off and tell us a little bit more about your background?
Yes. So my heritage is Vietnamese. We came to Australia in 1981 when I was around 2 years of age. So I'm a boat baby as such. What ended up happening was my parents left Vietnam in the middle of the night. They went with a few family members. My dad organised everything. So it was after the Vietnam War. And my dad and mum left a letter with a neighbour so they could essentially tell their parents that they were leaving their country.
Can I just ask, why did it need to be so clandestine? What was happening that you had to leave in the middle of the night?
Well, it was after the Vietnam War, so the South Vietnamese had lost the war, so the North Vietnamese had won. My dad was quite high up in the South Vietnamese army, so he was an SAS trainer, so he would train the guys to come in and do reconnaissance before they would send any troops in to do that sort of stuff. So my dad was quite high up. And as a result, it meant that post the Vietnam War, he would actually have to go to jail and have to wear the repercussions of what that meant, being a part of the war and the losing side, essentially. Mm-hmm. So he, and there was very little opportunity at the time. There was quite a bit of famine going on. So my parents decided, well, we want a better life for our family and our lives and anyone within the immediate family. So to do that, they had to leave a country that wasn't going to support them. Yeah. What they did was they packed up in the middle of the night. They had a boat ready to go to leave Vietnam, and there was 3 kids that were under the age of 2. And to leave, what we had to do was fill a boat very quietly without drawing too much attention, and then get on the boat and leave in the middle of the night so that you weren't caught. And if you were caught, the outcomes or what that meant was quite detrimental to life, essentially. Yeah. So the story and the understanding from what I've heard from my parents and uncles and aunties when they're retelling the story is that we were on the boat for 7 days. We then had lost, or not so much lost, but ran out of food and water. So we're on the 7th day and pretty much despair. People are thinking, what do we do? Do we need to offload a few people? What could potentially happen? And then as these thoughts were happening, we see an American naval ship coming on the horizon and then realise, wow, we're saved. So as a part of the naval and like war and military, when you're on the boat, if they see someone in trouble, they have to come and check things out. So as they came, they realised, oh, this boat is in trouble, they need food. They asked us, where are you guys going? And my father had said, we're going to the Philippines, we're escaping. So they actually filled the boat with food and then took us to the Filipino port, which is a friend of the Americans. And that's where we ended up. We were there for a good 9 months, and we were given the opportunity to go to Australia and to migrate and to be refugees in the Australian. Wow. So that's the story of how we got to Australia. Yeah, so that's my background as a refugee.
Sounds like a movie script, leaving in the dead of night. But your dad would have had a target on his back, seriously, being part of the losing side.
Yeah, so my grandfather ended up going to jail as a result of them leaving as well. So he wore the repercussions of what that meant, us leaving. So there's a lot. But my story isn't like a lot of refugees in not just from Vietnam but across the globe who come to Australia, Sudanese or any of, war-torn, like the Middle East, would have a very similar story and quite tragic stories. Like, we were very blessed to, as a whole entire family, arrive because we went together, but we also have uncles and aunties who left after us that didn't make it. So they passed while trying to escape Vietnam after we left. And there's a lot of stories around that place as well. So it sounds quite, heart-wrenching and quite sad, but I see it more of an opportunity for to look at success and what it means and to be grateful for where you're at, because you can be quite upset when you hear these stories, and you can hear these stories across the globe where people have left their home countries and what that actually meant, and to what it means to relocate to somewhere that you don't know the language and you've got nothing to show for it. But the Australian population at the time were very much about inclusivity, assimilation. So it was about being a refugee but becoming an Australian. And so that was very interesting. That journey is a whole story within itself.
Sure.
Yes.
So, and I think because I also moved to Australia, but my story is slightly different. We'll get to that in a minute. But I know that your parents, because they came from that, once they got here with you, they're like, right, let's do this. And they brought that sense of, I don't know, what word would you use for that? Just rebuilding and really focusing on making something of yourselves. And they instilled that in you in a really early age,
very
didn't
much
they?
so. Well, that's exactly the story of most migrant and it's not just about being Vietnamese or Southeast Asian. Anyone, whether you're English and you've come to a country with nothing, because I spoke to someone recently about being one of those penny Australians or
10-pound poms.
10-pound poms. Sorry.
That was my dad.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they would come and had nothing to show for it and had to work really hard. So I think Australia, well, I know that Australia as a country really does have a grit about them, because we've come from like being overseas and having to come to a country with nothing. And Australia is, as a country and a continent, we're quite young in the sense of our population.
Yeah.
So we all work really hard and we all strive really hard. And from the ethnic side, it's such a given to be grateful for where you are and where you're at. So my parents worked really hard. Like, it was 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Like, my mother still now works 7 days a week, like, 7 to 7 pretty much most days. So that's where I get my work ethic from. But I still enjoy, like, having fun and doing my thing. But that's where the fabric of who I am is as a result of that hard work.
You've achieved a lot already.
Well, thank you.
You have.
Yes.
You've gone to yeah.
Let's hear about how you went after school. What did you?
Well, I have a long story. So for those who are keen to sort of see my story, you're welcome to go to LinkedIn and have a look. But so I came out of school as an organisational psychologist. So working with larger organisations in relation to psychometric testing and working in that space. And so that came from a love of trying to understand and sort of wanting to fit in, because if you understand people, you can relate to people, and then you either empathise or sympathise with them, and then you're on that level with them. So that's where I came from. And from there, I moved into human resources because it aligns very much with that psychology. And then that's where all my foundation for entrepreneurship and business came from. So I actually worked for large organisations. While I was doing that, I created an organisation within the beauty industry. So nails and beauty has been my background since I was about 15. My mum trained as a beautician, as a good daughter as I was, I would then support her and help her with her clients and develop my skills in those areas. And so Professional Nails, one of my other businesses, developed and grew. So that was while I was working a proper 9 to 5 role, and then on the weekends I'd go and work at the salon and do work around that.
Wow.
Yeah, so from there, and then that was all history, and then I found a love for business, entrepreneurship, and I also really found a passion for health and nutrition. So the organisation of Think, Feel, Thrive came about, and that was the crux of that was to support my daughter in an autoimmune disorder. So she had really severe eczema, and so I went and retrained as a nutritionist and really looked into what true health meant for the body. And this is a lot of the alignment around Women in Bloom, because it's a 360 approach. It's the mind, it's your body, it's your soul, it's how you connect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I then realised the benefit of doing that could also be done through natural supplements, and so Think, Feel, Thrive then came about. And that's how our businesses, and there's a couple of other businesses in between there, but you'll learn about those as we progress. Yeah.
Wow. And so what would you say is really important to you now?
Well, there's a couple of really key important areas, but what things do I hold dear to me? My family is first.
Yes, when did you meet your husband?
Oh, well, when did I meet my husband? I met my husband when I was 21, and I was in my first workplace doing the HR work and working in human resources, transitioning some paperwork from one organisation to the other, and that's where I met him. And there's a bit of a story around that. So he invited me out for lunch and said it was company policy to take out new employees. Apparently it wasn't the case. and I being
Nice
so
work, Dilly.
naive at the time went, oh, this is amazing, this is such a forward thinking organisation, they clearly want to look after their staff. But little did I know at the time, he had an agenda and an idea of, there was a lot of, do you have a boyfriend? type sort of thing. And then we essentially never left each other's sides. So, yes, so that's how it all.
So since then, he's been on this wellness journey with you, I guess,
Yes,
as well.
yes, very much so.
What do you do for fun?
Well, I attend a lot of meetings through work and business and, connecting with you ladies. So my fun is literally spending time with my family in my PJs and doing absolutely nothing, like watching TV and connecting with them. So that's my idea of a good night.
You don't mind whipping up something fabulous in the kitchen either.
I
though.
do
You're
enjoy
so good at
cooking. I do enjoy. It's one of my. I call it a superpower in the sense that I don't have to think about it. I'd be able to whip up a meal and so if any Women in Bloom ladies would like me to come and whip up a meal at their house, more than happy to.
Don't go there.
You'll be inundated.
Oh,
it's a
yes.
lucky draw.
Yes, it is a lucky draw. Yes, so that's what my enjoy and my love. So family first, and then connecting with family and people like you guys and my loved ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
You've got a very, say, spiritual connection to your life. Yes, that's very important to you as well, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. I have been on that transition journey on understanding spirituality and what it truly means, and not to take away the wealth of what religion brings. Spirituality is a whole different level. It's connecting all the pieces for me, and it's knowing that everything is one and the same. And so for me, that journey has been very much an awakening and it's sort of enhanced everything. It's enhanced my businesses. It's enhanced all my connections with people. Like in our last podcast, we talked about the synergies of being able to meet you and being a part of Women in Bloom. So that's what I mean by spirituality, where you talk to the universe and you talk to someone greater than you and sort of say, well, you know what, I love what Women in Bloom is doing. Maybe one day that could come. And who would have thought in 6 months it came? And now we're sitting here and like almost a year on, really. No,
July,
July.
I think it was, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So,
When we first
so
met.
8 months on, we're now sitting here doing a podcast and connecting with our community.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting a website built, all of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the synergies are definitely, so that's where the spirituality, so linking it all back, I then realise I'm a part of something greater, but the greatness is also within me.
Yes.
Yes. So that's a big thing.
Yeah, I think it's fabulous. What a great story. Amazing, isn't it?
It's a fantastic story.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me share. Yes.
What about you, Caroline?
Mm.
You want to tell us your story?
Yeah, okay. Well, I
I
stopped
assume you didn't ride by boat, although our parents
by
may
plane.
have
But
plane.
it's interesting. I haven't. It's my story is interesting in that my dad was a 10-pound pom, but my mum was Australian born and bred, so far north Queensland. So Dad did the whole I'm coming out to Australia and working holiday with his mate. Did lots of Australia. His big regret is that he never bought land in Sydney in the 60s. He's like, I should have bought some land. But anyway, he did this big tour, went up to Townsville, just south of Townsville. There's this little town called Garoo. Shout out to Garoo. G'day, guys. At a sugar mill there. And Mum was working in the lab and he met her and he was this amazing Englishman from, imagine how exotic that must have been for her to meet this guy with a totally Cockney accent coming in, swept her off her feet. They were married. I don't know how much longer, I don't know what the gap was between them meeting and getting married, but they got married here in Garoo. And then Dad took Mum over to England to live there. And that's when I was born. And then my sister, and we lasted 12 years there before Mum said, I've had a gutful. I want to go home. I can't do this anymore. And we know now every winter, if you're familiar with English weather, it's dreary a lot of the time of the year. And my mum would get so depressed around winter and she would just feel so bad. And now we know that's seasonal affective disorder. We didn't know what it was then. So anyway, 12 years, she said, I've had a gutful. I want to go home. So we ended up settling in Beenleigh. I know that Mum and Dad were looking at Adelaide for a bit. Mum said the far north was too muggy for her, just a bit too hot. So we came to Beenleigh, and I've travelled all over the
That's a happy
world.
medium in between South Australia
And
Northern
far
Territory,
north
and
Queensland,
then
yeah.
Beenleigh.
Yeah, Beenleigh. So that's where basically we stayed, and I went to Beenleigh High. So I'm a real local girl because, we're based in Logan, basically.
Yes.
So I'm a local girl. And I then basically I did really, really well at school. I was a very conscientious student. Got to university where I realised that it was all sort of, you had to be self-motivated. And I realised that I absolutely hated studying. I really didn't like, do the 2,000 words, write academically, reference everything. To me, it was just tedium. And I recently had my numerology done. I was at a networking thing and this numerologist was there. And she worked it all out. And she said, oh, you learn by doing. You're not a studier. And I was like, bingo, that's it. So it just made sense to me. So what I did was instead of studying, I got into practical work. So I started off as a receptionist working for a doctor. Then I did a little bit of retail work working at Expo 88. And then I got bored with that. I get bored quite easily, as you'll find. I went overseas and taught English in Japan.
We'll make a note of it.
Yeah, gets bored easily. I taught English for a couple of years in Japan. I didn't need any qualifications other than I was Australian and I could speak English. But I took it really seriously. Those little kids were looking to, my youngest student was 2 and my oldest was 65.
How is your Japanese now?
I can still remember bits and pieces, but obviously when you're not using it every day, you forget.
Yes.
But no, I got in there and I was actually quite fluent. when I came home. So when I did that for a couple of years, came home, again worked in reception, but this time for a Japanese tour company because I had that Japanese language. So I did that for a couple of years, moved to Sydney with my then partner, and worked my way up the corporate ladder, broke up with him. That was when I found, I mentioned it in my last podcast, where I found my journal. He was my big first love, and I was smooshed after that. I was just a mess. Lived in Sydney for a while, about 4 or 5 years, came home. And what did I do then? Then I was really like getting up there. I worked as a PA and an EA for a biotechnology company, and was managing events and things like that, international travel, looking after all our scientists that were visiting, all that sort of stuff. It was a great job. That was probably one of the best jobs of my career. Then I got bored again. In that time I got married, and that lasted about 5 years. I got divorced. It was a difficult time.
With him too?
I didn't like the situation. So I got myself out of that. I didn't think that it was healthy for any of us to live like that. So it was...
it happens. And the awareness is what we want to support.
Absolutely. Yeah. I didn't think it was right for my children to grow up in an environment thinking that was normal or acceptable, because it wasn't. For me, it felt easier to do it by myself. And so I did. And I did it for 10 years, and I focused on my kids. They were everything.
There's a lot of women who go through that journey, that story.
And I didn't want to risk bringing in the wrong partner and then having their little hearts broken all over again. You know what I mean?
It's a common thread, a lot of...
I just wanted to make sure that it was me and them against the world. That's what it felt like. And my partner that I've been with now for 12 years, when he met my kids, it really changed the dynamic, especially for my daughter at the time. She was 14, and so I know she struggled with that, because suddenly she wasn't like number 2 in the household. It changed a little, but we all love each other very much. So, but anyway, in that time, I again got bored with the corporate type of stuff, and I often found myself thinking, what would radio be like? And so I did a short course in radio, 6 weeks, and we did what's called a show reel. And
it explains why you have such a great voice
thank you.
For radio and podcasts.
Thank you. Well, I sent my show reel off to a bunch of stations, and then got a call from 4VL in Charleville saying, when can you get here?
Charleville. Shout out to the ladies in Charleville.
Shout out to Charleville. I love you guys.
Not being from Queens, West Charleville, was that right?
West.
North? Oh,
West.
8 hours west.
9 hours,
yeah.
If you're dodging the ruse.
Yes.
Beautiful community. And I think you'll find a lot of people that work in radio start in the outback. They start in those small...
Outback radio.
Yeah. You cut your teeth there. And so from there, I went... And something that happened while I was there, my kids didn't do well there at all. And I was working really long hours in a brand new job. And my ex-husband said to me, if you get stuck, let me know. So I was stuck, and I let him know that the kids weren't doing so well. They weren't thriving. So he said, well, they can come and live with me. So they did. And so for the first time in my life, I didn't have my kids with me.
How was that?
For the first 2 weeks, it was a party central, because I wasn't, I was a single mum, and I was it all the time. And suddenly I didn't have that. So I was like, And then I remember... Oh, I'm going to get emotional. I had this nightmare about my little boy, and he wasn't there.
Oh. So it's all exciting for the first 2 weeks.
And then it goes to shit. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. So anyway.
So what happened?
Well, then I took another job in Mackay, because my kids were...
Mental note, we need tissues. We forgot the tissues. Yes.
No, we'll get it together.
Yes.
So then I moved from Charleville to Mackay, and after... And that was with the ABCs and breakfast radio at the ABC, ABC Tropical North. And that was like the cream of the crop for breakfast, for gigs, for radio gigs, in my little world anyway. I really enjoyed it, and my listeners enjoyed listening to me. I had some huge on-air mistakes. I remember
your kids will be back with you at this point?
No, they still weren't. And
how long was it to this point now?
It had been from July through to January, February, and then it got to April, May of that following year, and I said, even though I met a really nice guy as well. He was beautiful. Hi, Steve. He taught me that really good men are out there and they exist, and he was just a beautiful guy. Gave me hope and treated me and took me out to Airlie Beach, and it was gorgeous. It was just what I needed at that time after being alone for so long. And so I had the career, I had the man, and my kids weren't with me, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I need to go home. I need my children. I need my babies. I mean, I was visiting them and they were flying up to, it wasn't like I didn't see them. I rang them every night at 7:00. Every single night I rang them and talked to them about what they were doing and all of that. And then I came home, worked for a local radio station, worked for Rebel and The Breeze radio stations, which I also loved. Then I wouldn't say call it getting bored, but I just felt like I needed a little bit more. So I moved into the corporate world again, but on a more casual basis, so that my kids, after having that experience, my kids came first. Do you know what I mean? And then after that, I was still alone. I decided to do a film and radio TV course. Again, my poor kids, we're really close, I must say. We have a very good relationship. But when I was doing this film and TV course, I was nailing it. I was getting really good marks and passing everything. But my kids, I was having to drop them off at 6 a.m. before school hours care, picking them up at 6:00 at night. It was no life for them. And what really flipped it for me, other than me feeling exhausted and them going to bed at 9:00 at night, because that's the only time they had with mummy after homework and dinner. So we went through all of Harry Potter's books. I would read Harry Potter to them.
You should try homeschooling then. This is why we don't have that school.
Well, I had to work. I mean,
I understand.
Yeah, I had to bring money in. It was a balance. It was like, I can either work full-time and never see my kids, or I can work part-time and eat noodles for the next 2 weeks. It was always that juggle, and any single parent will tell you the same thing.
Yes. Well,
I don't
a
know
lot of
how.
families, in particular single parents.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it now. I have no idea how it's, because I've been partnered for 12 years now. But anyway, I did the film and TV course. I was at my Ewan, my youngest, my son. It was his parent-teacher interview. And she said, I just want to show you a story that he wrote. And it's in his little grade 2. Like, once upon a time, the story goes, once upon a time there was a little boy who could sleep in. And he woke up when he was ready. I'm not joking you. And I looked at that and I looked at her, and she went, nodded at me.
Oh, my goodness.
And yeah, that's the nice way of what I was thinking. And so I just weighed it up. And with any big decision I make, how does it feel? Heavy? Does it feel light?
Yes.
So the decision to quit the film and TV course felt light. It was like, I'm not a failure if I quit it. I'm failing my children if I don't.
Yeah.
So
turning points.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Those moments, do I go to Mackay and take on this job even though I miss my kids? They're happy with their dad, So there were all those decisions. And then where are we up to now? So I'm working.
You've given up your film and television.
Film and television.
Oh, well, let's not say given up. You've put it on hold.
Yeah.
Well, what did come from that, interestingly, was a fantastic script and an idea for a kids' TV show. And I actually spent a little bit of money working with a Hollywood agency in developing that. I had a producer working with me. So it's about, for me, it's success. Yes, it's measured in the things that you have, but it's the joy is the journey, right? And the fact that I can say I did that excites me. I got to write a script for kids. I got to work with a Hollywood producer. And all those fun things. Nothing might have happened from it because I don't have $10 million to sling towards it or a famous person to put their name to it, which is why...
Not yet.
But you never know. So
all those women in bloom out there who potentially could do a script and produce the show with Caroline, by all means, get to it.
I was a single mum with 3 kids and the backside hanging out of my pants, and it didn't stop me dreaming. It did not stop me wanting to achieve things. I think... And sometimes things fall over. Sometimes things don't work out. And the failure comes from the way you look at it and if you decide to just give up. And the same can be said for running a business too, because from there, I stayed in the corporate world basically after I did my radio thing and the film and TV thing. I got back into the corporate world, again, ended up getting up there and managing an office for a community services organisation. And then cut to when I'm 50, I take a voluntary redundancy, and that's when I created my company and was sort of bubbling along there. Also did some side hustle work again with Rebel and The Breeze to help me while I was building my business. So I've made all these beautiful connections. I'm still in touch with people from my past who mean the world to me. Cheryl, who is one of the owners of the radio station, has ended up being an incredible business mentor to me. So going back to work for her, while she could give me advice about running Bath Calm while I was helping her with the social media, that was great. It's just such a great feeling. And now taking all of that with me and bringing it to Women in Bloom, I think is exciting.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you think you get bored? Is it because it's not something that really satisfies you or you find fulfilling, or is this something missing? Or?
Yeah, creativity, the ability to create within, I would still, if I was in a position where my kids were around me, I'd still be working in radio, I think, because I got to create my program. I got to source talent. I got to, produce a lot of the stuff that I was doing as well. So, and that was just, that scratched all the creative itch that I had. But because my kids weren't with me, I couldn't live like that anymore. I didn't have kids to not have them, So
the Bath Calm gives you that.
It does. It gives me that sense of creativity. I get to express myself through writing with my blogs, and I get to, play kitchen chemist when I'm creating new blends. And that gives me joy. And I think because I move from one thing to another, I have done, I don't know, maybe I'm an old soul. I don't know what it is, but I just want to try and do as much as I can in the life that I have. I never want to stop blooming, if you will. Yes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great attitude to have, especially... Well, we're here for a moment in time, and to utilise it as best we can and to have experiences. Like, that's one of our big things as a family. We talk about getting as much experience, being creative, having creative intelligence while evolving. And evolving for us means experiences, like doing as much as you can and not having it feel like you're going to do it right or wrong. It's about getting out there and giving it a go.
The older I get, the more I appreciate that.
Yes.
Failure is less of an issue than not having a crack at it in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's one of the, Annie, you would agree that it's one of our core things as Women in Bloom, that we want to our community to experience different things in a way that's nurturing, but still a little bit outside of your box.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's not until you step out of your comfort zone that you experience new things and stretch yourself. And if it feels right, even though it's a bit scary, keep going. Yes. And the rewards always come. And it may not be, you may not end up where you expected or even hoped, but it may even be a lot better.
That's exactly right.
It often works that way. I've read that.
Yeah. I spoke to my husband and I was saying that I would never have thought that I'd be sitting on the boards that I sit on now with, being vice president of the Logan Chamber. Like 10 years ago, I would never have thought that there was an opportunity there. And then and now sit on Education Roundtable supporting the Logan community in youth engagement. Like that is... So we as people, and we talked about it in our last podcast, we have a closet full of experiences, and not just individually but collectively, that we then can support our community in particular.
That's one of the... Sorry, jumping in there. But as we get older, we have so much more experience, so much more knowledge, so much more to offer the community at large to actually contribute to younger women's development or people's development, full stop. For older women to just quietly withdraw and
feel like
disappear
they're
from
fading.
society.
Yeah, fading in the background.
Like hell.
Was in the perception of, yeah.
So
Yeah.
But they just sometimes they're their own worst enemies, and we are. I should own it too. That we think, oh no, I'm too old, or I'm
Yeah.
whatever. So we don't think we're up to it, but we've got so much to contribute, and so much still excitement and fun, like just as you have, and enjoyment to get out of life by.
It's your turn now, Addie.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about your background, the origin story. We'd love to hear your origin story.
Well, my parents came from England, but not on a as 10 one was it 10
£10 poms.
10 pound poms. My father wanted to go from Scotland to somewhere that was much cleaner and fresher, so he chose Tasmania. So they arrived with my brother and sister, and then I was born a few years after they arrived. They knew absolutely no one there. I think my mother went through an awful time being on her own, coming from a place like England to Scotland where everyone lives close, you've got family and community and there's a connection.
So
She
strong,
was
yeah.
on her own. I was an unexpected surprise when I came along, which would have made it much more difficult for my mother. She was already struggling. But anyway, long story short, we ended up settling when I had a great upbringing in Hobart.
Oh, so your parents went straight to Tasmania?
Straight to Tasmania, straight to Hobart. Yes.
That would have been more, like it's not mainland Australia. It's like
No, well, yeah.
How did it feel?
No, it was all I knew. Living with the backyard creek running through the back of the yard, and then the paddock, and
sounds idyllic.
walking to school, and then bush across the road, and playing in the bush and battling the local kids up the road, knocking their forts down. I mean, it was just a lovely upbringing. Anyway, so I grew up there, enjoyed school, but enjoyed art the most. And everyone said that I was good at art, so I, long story short, ended up at art school. But after a few years, I was thinking, why am I here?
Like fine art.
Well,
Yes.
I got a scholarship. I got a scholarship early. My parents think, no, you need to get your matriculation under your belt first. So they wouldn't support me to go. So I went back and ended up getting a scholarship to teach, which enabled me to do it. Making a long story out of this, but anyway, I loved art school, but I really thought, I don't really know what I'm doing here. I never actually thought, what do I want to do with my life? I just found myself there. But I knew I loved being creative, and I was quite happy to start teaching because I loved that teaching process of working with kids. And then just about to start teaching, and things happened. I ended up leaving Hobart, relationship issues, all that sort of complications of life. Left and went to Sydney, which I hated initially because the air was dirty and
Coming from Hobart,
right?
You go right in the thick of
But I had a great friend there, probably my oldest, dearest friend, Chrissy. If you're listening, this is all your fault.
Chrissy.
I don't know where it actually came from, but I just got curious about what it would be like to work in the beauty industry. So I started doing some research and ended up training as a beauty therapist. And from there, it kind of snowballed. I worked for Clarins initially, David Jones, Clarins counter. And then I got offered the opportunity to run a salon within a hairdressing salon in the city, which was fabulous, a great experience. And then one of my clients, who was a doctor, she ran a medical clinic. Well, it was one of the first cosmetic medical clinics. She asked if I would work with her, Adriana, who was lovely. And so I was working with doctors when lasers for skin research, or glycolic acid and all those early skin treatments were coming through.
No one was talking about, really. It was
being
very
discovered.
early movement.
Yeah.
Are we talking 80s here? Around the
80s,
80s?
yeah. Late 80s. And it's actually thinking back what you were saying before, be careful what you wish for, because a beauty therapist came to the clinic one day. She was offered a free treatment. I was thinking, cool, I wouldn't mind being a beauty therapist. It'd be good to be in that industry. And I was thinking, yeah, I could really relate to that. Never in my wildest dreams imagining that one day I would become a beauty therapist. Anyway, so with the whole glycolic acid enthusiasm wave addiction that people started to have about skincare, I could see there were issues, there were complications, that people weren't being made aware of it, made aware of that you could push it too far. And I got talking to a friend who suggested, well, why don't we develop a skincare line? So we came up with the whole concept, an alternative to glycolic acid, which was based on lactic acid. And we then found a chemist, a formulating chemist, and we launched a skincare line called Pilactic, which was hugely successful. It was doing well in Australia, it was in Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, in the States. But I was so naive when I went into it. I didn't really think of all the legalities of going into partnership with friends. Anyway,
huge learning experience.
A huge learning experience. Yeah. So in 2000, I left that. I had to leave my baby and walk away.
How did you feel when that happened?
Devastated, because I knew it had huge potential.
Yeah.
It was a great product. I loved traveling around and training with beauty therapists. I loved seeing the results it was getting for people. I loved the fact that it was a product that helped business owners, provides a great service. So it was kind of, but I was also exhausted. I was so
your life was
out.
that business.
It was. So at that point in time, I said, that's it, no more beauty. I want nothing to do with the beauty industry. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So a girlfriend of mine at the time, she was the editor of Family Circle magazine.
Oh, yes.
And
that's how.
And we had shared a house together, and she knew I liked styling homes. And so she said, why don't you come in and... No, first of all, it was Better Homes and Gardens. Then I went to Family Circle, then back to Better Homes. But she knew I liked styling, so I was their in-house stylist for a period of time. And then one thing led to another, and Better Homes and Gardens started having beauty and health pages. So they said,
would you like to?
Yeah.
And you're still doing
still
that?
doing it.
Oh, I love that story. That's so
But
awesome.
along the way, I've always been interested in well-being and us taking responsibility for ourselves and just being curious about the mind, body, and spiritual connections. So I did train as a transformational life coach.
How long ago was that?
2005.
Oh, there you go. So nearly 20 years ago. Goes quick, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
Especially when you calculate it like that.
Well, in my mind, 20 years ago is 1980, but that's actually not the case. It's not the case.
But it was during that time, I think, it kind of kicked off a few curiosities about who am I? I mean, do I get in my own way? Am I holding myself back? What really resonates for me? How can I get more enjoyment out of life? Because I think I spent a lot of my life dancing according to what was going on around me, and just rather than pushing and creating my own flow. I probably was unconsciously more than I realized, but I wasn't actually. I didn't have any goals set. I wasn't driven. So the coaching was great. It kind of started opening doors.
It does.
To
when
a lot
you
of
start
things.
doing those courses, when you start retraining and moving into, like me, getting retrained as a nutritionist and sort of health and well-being coach and that sort of thing, you start to do a lot of self-analysis and you start to really look internally, because when you get trained as a coach, it's about, initially you start off with, I'm going to be supporting a lot of people, and but then when you go through the course, you start to realize, no, this is about me. I'm going to learn everything I need to know about me, and then it opens so much, like you're unfolding a whole heap of stuff about you before you then can support others in their journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think thinking back to that time, it was when Oprah was very big, and some of her gems of wisdom and the magazines that she used to put out, I've still got some of them, and they were just
great lessons.
Belonging to yourself and taking responsibility for yourself, etc. But anyway, it was it was back in 2010, I started thinking, there are a lot of women out there that could have a better quality of life. There are a lot of women out there who
would need support.
Need support.
Yeah.
There's a lot of women who, it's not just beauty, it's that whole, to improve the quality of their life.
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness. So that's when the ideas of doing something started to germinate about women in bloom.
What's important to you? Obviously supporting women and being a beacon for creating an organisation that's a beacon for women who want that level of connection in many areas. What's important to you as well as that?
I think what's most important to me is for me to be authentic, to me to be me. And I'm still in the process of uncovering who I am.
I don't think we ever stop.
No.
Really.
Yeah.
Like you think, you think when you're younger, right, in your 20s or whatever, you're looking to these sages or women in their, late 40s and 50s and thinking, wow, they must have it together. They must know what's going on. Why is it that I'm so confused about where I'm at?
Yeah.
But really, we, at every iteration of our age and us representing the 40s, 50s and 60s, right, we all are unfolding different things at different stages. Not to say that they're not maybe the same, but they present differently at different ages.
Yeah. And it's what I'm learning now. Some women will learn it when they're in their 30s or resonate more with. I'm at a point where I what's important to me is to encourage as many women we can come in contact with to actually grab life with both hands, get out of their own way, believe in themselves, as quietly or as loudly as they want to.
Do it in the way that is authentic to you.
Yeah.
And this is where authenticity comes in for each of us. We all come from different backgrounds, or we carry. A friend of mine and some of my guiding teachers talk about Post-it notes. So we come into this earth and this planet with Post-it notes, things that we have to release, stories we've told ourselves, and experiences or traumas that we sort of hang on to. The idea is to release all of them, but it can be done at different ages. Yeah. It can be done at different times, and it might take you 7 iterations to lose one Post-it note. Yeah. But the idea is that's what Women in Bloom embodies. Yeah. We would like to support women 45 plus in that awareness. Like, it's okay that you're repeating this again, but if you don't want to, what would it look like? What would you need to understand about yourself to actually release that Post-it note?
Yeah, and if you don't know what to do or how to go about it, that's okay too. Yes. Just ask. Just have to say, hey, what do I do about this? Or what do you think about that? To know
that the community is here because it's horses for courses, right?
Yep.
Someone who I might resonate with may not resonate with either of you. So this is where the collaboration and the community side of it comes into play for us.
Yeah,
so true. And we mentioned this in our previous podcast. If we want to hear from you, we want to know your stories and what's important to you as well. So get that survey filled out if you haven't done it yet.
That's what I was going to say, exactly that.
So they can get that on the social.
Absolutely. We're going to be pinning it to the top of our socials for quite some time, because the more data we have, the more we can figure out what we can do. There might be many of you out there who are dealing with kids that have drug problems. How do you manage that? Yes. Let's pull in some people to help you.
Well, it doesn't even have to be
anything.
At level, everything. And once you
how do I cook a good pastry? How do I cook a good pastry?
But before we get to all those things that are happening out there, let's focus on these women feeling good in here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's not being selfish. It's not being self-absorbed. It's about honouring who you are for the greater good as well.
Self-awareness.
Yeah. Well, they teach that on the flight, don't they? You basically got to get your own oxygen mask fixed before you start looking at everyone else. Yeah. Otherwise, you're no good to anyone, are you?
Well, we talked about all our different stories, and then I said I like to get into my PJs, and that's my point of fun. Annie, what do you do for fun? What's your to giggles?
I love going to my painting classes, which I've started doing again once a week, having lunch with girlfriends, going for a walk.
Will you ever share one of your artworks with us?
Yeah.
Oh, it sounds
you can have it hanging up at some point.
Yeah. We'll do a show and share.
I've been doing some paintings of people I
Podcast.
care about, like, for example, my mother and a few other, and my partner, which feels great. It feels great.
Are you doing portraits or is it landscapes or is
Portraits,
it
people,
Portrait. Oh,
people. That's my passion.
Oh,
People.
wow.
I majored in life
Okay.
drawing, so yeah. So.
We'll have to get Annie to do some for us.
Sounds amazing.
No, that's my
When she's
my
ready.
go-to zone of just being in.
Yeah, in the zone, in
my
flow.
zone. Yeah,
So you could spend hours on it and not realize you spent hours
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
That's it.
For me,
I love getting out of here and into here and just feeling a response to whatever's going on. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
whether it's But that's about it, I think.
I like riding on the back of my partner's motorbike.
Oh,
That's my
it.
zone
That's
out.
your phone.
I'm in such a happy place there. I used to have my bike license, and then I let it go after I saw a few bike accidents. Literally after I got my learners, so just I thought, no, I'm not going to worry about that right now. But now I've been doing so much more riding with him. I'm out so much, and I see couples with their motorbikes, and they're just touring around for the day. So I think I'd like to do that. So that's going to be a goal for me in the not too distant future, is to get my bike license again.
And you get your bike license
Yep.
and I'll get my pilot's license. So that's
Oh, okay.
my...
Oh, I want to fly as well. Flying, how good is that?
Yes.
You've had a lesson, haven't you? You had a couple?
I've had a couple of
Yeah.
lessons now, and it's been amazing.
Yeah.
So now it's about the theory, and I've had a look at the size of the books and what it actually means to study. So any pilots out there,
Colin,
in
my
particular-
partner, he flies.
yes,
But he
and
hasn't for a while.
to have a mentor to run through and tell me what it's all about would be lovely.
See, the world's our oyster. There's so
It is.
many things. But
Yeah, you're never too
really gotta
old.
leave
Don't
that
let
up for
anyone,
time.
including yourself, say you're too old.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, well, I think that brings us
that's
to the end of our podcast.
That's a natural
so.
conclusion, isn't it? Yeah,
think so,
that's about
I think
it.
If we don't stop now, we'll just keep going and going
Yes.
and going.
But we absolutely we could. But I think we should hear a word from our friendly sponsor.
Oh,
Yes, today, ladies, do you want to quickly grab one of the... This is my organisation. So when I retrained, Think, Feel, Thrive came into existence. It's basically detoxification and nutritional replenishment products. Supplements that you supplement your daily nutrition, food that you eat. So this tops you up. So the organisation and what I do with Think, Feel, Thrive is it's all natural, organic, whole-based supplements, and it is to support the family. Our slogan is let nature's nutrients heal. So these are all natural-based products. Go to our website. It is www.thinkfeelthrive.com. And we would love to support you and your family on your nutritional and health journey. Thank you.
Beautiful. Love it.
Okay.
So what are we chatting about next time? What's our next podcast, ladies?
Our next podcast is
Women in Bloom, the online community.
What it is to bloom, what it means to
Oh,
each
yeah.
of us.
our
Yeah.
community, what it means to be
A bloomer.
a bloomer.
Are we calling ourselves bloomers or blossoms?
Well, I'm looking for amazing ambassadors and community that would love to connect with us.
Yep.
And to be a part of our immediate team and to be contributors, collaborators,
Yeah.
connectors, on all those.
Sponsors.
Sponsors, yes.
Funders, supporters, anything
Support
that's gonna
everything.
help us reach
Yes.
more and more women.
Yes, and to connect with as many women 45 plus as
Yeah,
possible.
I guarantee that no matter who you are or where you're from, you have something to offer. You have something special.
Yes.
So come and join us.
Yes.
Thank you.
And
And with that,
Love you, love life.
Cheers.